There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, an exciting day today. I mean, sort of a moment that we have all been waiting for so long. There's been so much criticism and so much conspiracy theories. When the police are left to do their job, they do a competent job. And I specifically... Guys, we're talking about the Long Island serial killer. And if you haven't heard, they've made an arrest in this case. And the perpetrator's name is Rex Heuermann, who's a male white, 59 years old. He was arrested last night at his office in Manhattan. This isn't just a fluke arrest. The police have very sufficient evidence, including DNA evidence, cell phone evidence, all types of evidence. It seems like an extremely solid case. They went into his home. He lives in Massapequa. Right at this point, they're calling the women in this picture on the screen the Gilgo Beach Four. And of course, it's Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. They credit this with old-fashioned police work, with helping to solve this case. The breakthrough came through matching the location of his home and his office to the location of a burner cell phone that made calls to the victims before they died. I mean, I know we expect this from the police, still fantastic police work. Chilling similarities can be drawn between Heuermann and a married father of two and the killer described in a 2011 FBI profile of the Gilgo Beach killer. That profile described a sadistic but charming average Joe who could blend into any environment unnoticed. Heuermann lived a seemingly normal average Joe life until he was arrested yesterday. Basically, the profilers of Heuermann told the New York Times that the suspect was likely financially stable and bright. He may have sought treatment at a hospital for poison ivy infection as part of his job or interest. He has access to or a stockpile of burlap sacks, which the victims were wrapped in. He grew up in Massapequa Park, attending high school with Billy Baldwin, and started working in Manhattan in 1987. Heuermann was married once in 1990, and again years later to his current wife, Asa Ellerup, who is of Icelandic descent. He and Asa have an adult daughter named Victoria, who works with Heuermann and is at his architectural firm, and a stepson, Asa's son from a previous marriage. So some of the evidence that they have against Rex Heuermann was revealed actually in court by the prosecution so that Rex Heuermann would not even be considered for bail. And some of this evidence, as told to the Daily Mail, are his wife's DNA was found on 3 of the victims' bodies. One of his own hairs was found on one of the victims' bodies. Cell phone calls made from a burner phone to the victims were traced to his office. A call made to one of the victim's sisters after she died was traced to his office. His Tinder profile with photos of him was linked to the burner phone. His Chevrolet pickup truck was seen by witnesses to one victim's disappearance. He matches descriptions of ogre-like man seen with one victim before she vanished. Heuermann conducted graphic searches for child porn and images of women being sexually abused. He also searched Google for updates on the case, searching why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer. So I believe this is pretty solid evidence. Today, when he was arraigned, he pled not guilty. We have no information at this time whether or not he invoked counsel immediately or whether he made any statements to detectives when he was arrested. Joining me this afternoon is the man of reason I always call, professor and retired NYPD sergeant, an attorney, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, Mike Geary. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Billy, thank you for having me on. Good to see you this afternoon.
You know, Mike, I got a call very early this morning by my sister, and she said, there's been an arrest in the Long Island serial killer. And I said, no way. I said, no way. I think the press is just making something up. And sure enough, I went on, and as it turned out, he wasn't arrested this morning. He was arrested yesterday at his office in Manhattan. Mike, I want to give you the stage a little bit and your feelings.
Billy, this is wonderful. You and I have talked about this case, and Phil, everybody in the New York City area, especially people on Long Island. This is something that has haunted people. I remember years back in the 70s, 1976, 1977, with the 44 caliber killer, Son of Sam. People felt intense fear. And this is the same kind of thing. Young ladies have felt for over a decade, very fearful of being out on Long Island, going to clubs, in the evening. And even though all of these ladies, we believe, have been escorts, this pattern of young women disappearing and then their bodies being found wrapped in burlap. And because they're all very young, they're all attractive, and we think, I think all of them were escorts. And that's the modus operandi of a serial killer. And to think that a serial killer is on the loose in your county, in your neighborhood where you live on Long Island, is played heavily on people's minds for a long time. And people could breathe a sigh of relief and say, thank God that person is now in custody. And that's a wonderful day for law enforcement. Kudos to the Suffolk County Police Department, the Nassau County Police Department, and even the help with the New York City Police Department. That's interagency cooperation at its finest. And we should all be very appreciative of it.
Mike, I'm sure the feds were involved here, the FBI too. So let's give them the kudos they deserve also. Yeah. Sometimes we forget to mention the FBI. One of the things I really want to mention is Rodney Harrison. Mm-hmm. Can't be prouder of former NYPD chief of detectives, former NYPD chief of department, now the Suffolk County Police Department. And Rodney Harrison, early on, when he took over this case, he right away established a task force, which was what a brilliant. Well, look, the NYPD, we love task force. We love the sound of it.
Yes.
We love to name task force. And this is what early on when Rodney Harrison first took over. Let's hear what he has to say here.
Cop Rodney Harrison announced the first of its kind Gilgo Beach homicide investigation task force on Tuesday afternoon.
I'm very confident it's going to help us identify a suspect going into the near future.
The multi-agency panel includes investigators from federal, state, and local levels. Together, they'll focus on figuring out the person or people responsible for the murders of nearly a dozen victims, many of whom were sex workers, whose remains were found along Ocean Parkway more than a decade ago. With a fresh set of eyes, the new team will also look at years-old evidence and use scientific techniques to uncover the names of the remaining unidentified victims.
Having all of these partners are going to help us utilize technology, utilize sciences, cultivate witnesses, cast a broader net out to as many people as possible that could possibly assist.
Back in December, when Harrison was just weeks into his new role as police commissioner, he pledged to make the case a priority.
Using the appropriate sciences that we might not have used in the past, I think is going to help out with the investigation a whole lot. going down the road.
Harrison, who believes the case is solvable, says he's open to releasing the 911 call from Shannon Gilbert, the escort who went missing in 2010, as long as it doesn't hinder with the investigation. Gilbert's disappearance is what ultimately led to the discovery of several remains in the area. And a lot of questions have been raised in the past about the Suffolk County Police Department and how they handled the case. Attorney John Ray, who represents the Gilbert estate, calls the formation of the task force a good development.
He's opening the door to re-examining the entire case or cases.
While the Nassau County Police Department isn't directly represented on the task force, members of the department will continue to assist in the overall investigation. Jody Goldberg.
So pretty amazing, Mike, that, they started this task force. It, of course, now we could say it bore fruit. It is successful. And, I want to say something that also I think that we're going to find out once we hear potentially from the live press conference is that all of these cases, science comes in solving these cases. And I guarantee you, we read earlier, his wife's DNA was found on 3 of the victims' bodies. And that was discovered through hair that he had on his body. That was his wife's hair. So right away, you know what I'm thinking, Mike? I'll let you say it. I don't want to stop you.
Are you talking about
transfer? But I'm talking about investigative genetic genealogy. There is no. I shouldn't have tried to stump the professor. I should have gave you a couple of hints.
Cards, transfer, low cards.
Principle of exchange.
I couldn't think of his name. I'm like, what's that guy's name? Thank you. Yeah, it's just fabulous because you realize that the tiniest bit of evidence, like a hair or fibers from a jacket or something like that, that are on the perpetrator, if they end up on the victim, if you could trace whatever that is back to them, that's a fabulous thing. A lot of people don't realize how much as you know, and Phil knows, homicide detectives, how much transfer there is between a perpetrator and a victim. Going in and going out of a crime scene. That's fantastic. It's fantastic stuff. And investigative genealogy absolutely was used in this case because they're probably, I would imagine, since he was never arrested previously that we know of, and so therefore his fingerprints and probably his fingerprints, and maybe they are because he's an architect. He might be licensed. Maybe you have to have a fingerprint, but certainly not his DNA being on file. He was never arrested. He was never, before for any sort of crime. So therefore, how do you get this DNA? How do you trace it? Well, you trace it back through the genetic genealogy, which is as Dee what's the lady's name? Dee Wallace, not Dee.
Oh no, Cece Moore.
Cece Moore. Cece Moore.
Yeah.
As she has explained, that opens up a whole new area, a very fruitful area for policing, because you can solve these sorts of crimes. If this had been available in 2010, when the ladies were first discovered, this might not have gone on very long. But it means in the future, the promise of the future is that you're not going to have these serial killer kind of cases going on for a long time, and that you may stop a serial killer in his tracks. And that is fabulous.
Mike, also we're going to get into every aspect of this case, but I just want to start slowly. Let's play a little bit and see who this guy Rex is. Let's play a little bit of this and see who he actually is.
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
I'm sorry?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know.
One of the things I want to make clear is that there's a good possibility that Rex Heuermann didn't do all these murders. We don't know at this point. He's actually being charged with 3. They're calling him the Gilgo 4, and that's Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Megan Waterman. Even Shannon Gilbert isn't being he's not being charged with that now.
That's right.
Apparently today he was charged with 3 out of the 4. And they can always bring further charges against him at a future date. But right now, he's not being charged with all of these cases because, first of all, they don't know if they're all linked. You may ask, well, what is Gilgo Beach, a body dumping ground? But they don't know at this point, even though it's been so many years, they can't connect all of these things. They need to scientifically connect them all together. It's probably a 99% chance that this guy, Rex Heuermann, lawyered up, which means he invoked counsel. Folks, if you're a first-time listener, if a defendant invokes counsel, that means the police cannot interview that defendant. So there's a good possibility that he did that. So we won't know. He's not going to admit to anything because he pled not guilty in court. So I would assume 99% chance he invoked counsel. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Billy, you know, as a homicide detective, as a police officer, you know, that sort of thing, you've seen many crime scenes and you've had many investigations where you know in your heart and in your mind with your intuition, a particular suspect is the person who killed someone. They're the prime suspect. You go to the district attorney and they might say, no, don't make the arrest. We're not going to authorize the arrest. We're not going to charge that person formally. And it's very frustrating, but you know in your heart what you think, what you got, the information you got your instinct, but the district attorney is always looking past that to the trial. What can they prove at trial? Doesn't matter what they know in their heart or their minds to be. Can they actually prove that in a trial to a jury of the defendant's peers? And if they don't think that they can actually prove that, like that case against someone, then they won't bring the charges. And in this case here, you've got Maureen Barnes. He is their number one suspect in that case. They don't have any other suspect, but they're holding off on that until perhaps some other time where they may get something else. But it is frustrating. And obviously there's been a lot of bodies found, at least 11 over in that area. Some of them may be, for instance, Miss Gilbert, they believe that was an accident. We're not sure exactly the circumstances. And there was some other skull and some other unidentified people. They're not all in this exact same area. They seem to be spread out over with the burlap. They were found very close to each other, but there's others that were found farther away. You'd hate to think that it's been used, Gilgo Beach has been used as a dumping ground for bodies. That sends shivers down your spine. But yeah, I would bet my paycheck that he is not the suspect in each and every one of those homicides, because some of those homicides are even connected to other places like Fire Island and from like a previous decade. And so, you know, he remains the prime suspect in other cases, but he may never be charged with them. We'll have to wait and see.
You know, Mike, just the other day, they found another set of human remains along Southern Parkway. I'm just going to play a little bit of this here and see what.
A driver spotted human skeletal remains early this morning just off the Southern State Parkway in Islip. Now the investigation is underway into who the remains belong to and what happened to him or her. Eyewitness News reporter Tom Negovin is live at the scene. Tom?
Those remains were found just a short distance inside the woods behind me, just off exit 40 on this very, very busy parkway. Police at a very early stage of their investigation. All they'll confirm for us right now is that the remains are human.
Upon closer look, the individual believed it to be human skeletal remains and called 911.
A passing motorist likely getting the shock of his life.
making a discovery that led to this large police presence on the Southern State Parkway. Investigators here from the State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Forensic Identification Unit. All they know is that someone was driving by when something in the woods caught his eye. Closer examination led to that call to 911. The rest a mystery for now. Among the questions, how long have the remains been here? They're described as skeletal. How did they come to be in the woods by the side of the road? And of course, who do they belong to?
This is currently an ongoing investigation at its onset, and it is too early to tell the identity of the human remains or the involvement of any type of criminality.
So the next step in this investigation, an examination by the Suffolk County Medical Examiner's Office that'll be looking at cause and manner of death. If and when criminality can be established, then investigators take a look at this in relation to any unsolved homicide cases here on Long Island.
Wow.
So we thought that was worth mentioning. Whether or not it's connected to this, we don't know. However, to ignore it when it is so close to this area would be remiss in our duties.
That's right. You don't know the extent to how, you don't know how long exactly Mr. Heuermann has been operating as a serial killer. We don't know. Obviously, I'm sorry, he does, enjoy the presumption of innocence. So we're not so. But I'd rather just say we're not sure how long this kind of activity has been going on by the suspect, Mr. Heuermann. But the body parts may have been out there. The skeletal remains might have been out there for 6 months. It's not something brand new, and so someone found it, and that's good. You're going to look to see the location. You're going to look to see the cause of death. You're going to look to see in terms of the Gilgo Beach, the bodies were wrapped in a burlap blanket, and so that goes to the modus operandi. So it could be that this is something that, unless they figure out whether or not it's actually a homicide, it might have been someone who overdosed or something, that sort of thing. There's many other ways, manners of death. So we're not sure yet. Very early on in that investigation, and hopefully the ME's office will be able to come up with some sort of, cause of death.
Mountain Cat, yes, we are covering the press conferences. Has it gone live? Let me know, guys, if it's starting up. Okay, let me take a look for the press conference here, and we'll pull it up live. I don't see it on live yet. Folks, as soon as I see the, I don't see it coming on live right now, unless I'm on the wrong channel. But let me take a search for it, Mike. I'll put something up here on the screen. That's the area, Mike. If you could talk about this, the area with a lot of these.
Yeah. For people who aren't familiar with the New York surrounding the New York area, Long Beach Island. Long Island. It's the Southern State Parkway. It goes along east and west along the southern part of Long Island for a great distance from Nassau County, which borders, Queens, all the way out to the lighthouse out by the Hamptons. There's long stretches of road. It's narrow. A lot of it is unlit, and it's beautiful beaches all along that way, dunes, things like that, scrub brush. There's plenty of places for a person if they wanted to, unfortunately, hide a body. They could, within the sand, within the dunes, under the brush, in the vegetation, the trees, the scrub trees and things like that. And also, if they thought that they could get the body far enough out into the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean there, that they could be able to, the body could wash away. So it is a place where it's very, very difficult to, it'd be very tempting for someone if they were so inclined to, dump a body there and hide it.
I think, Mike, it's starting up. I'm going to play it. I
Oh,
may
good.
be a second or two late, but let me get this on the screen. There we go.
Detectives. He's been indicted in a grand jury presentation by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. The investigation of Maureen Brainerd Barnes is ongoing. These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They were found in December of 2010 by the Suffolk County Police Department, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved until today. When I took office in January of 2022, I made Gilgo a priority. I made Gilgo a priority before I took office. I met with the victims' families, some of whom I'm proud to have standing with us today. And I told them that we were going to handle this case differently. We were going to do it differently. And that when I showed up, you weren't going to see me calling the media and being on Gilgo Beach with a giant magnifying lens looking for clues 12 years after the case. What I was going to do was I was going to work with my task force. We were going to form a task force. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Police Department. We were going to work with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office. We were going to work with the New York State Police. We were going to work with our FBI, and we were going to form this task force, and we were going to work together, and we were going to use the grand jury, the power of the grand jury to reach a determination in this case. Because the grand jury has two things. It has power, it has reach. You could obtain documents, you could interview witnesses. But the other thing that the grand jury has, no one knows what you do when you operate a grand jury proceeding. And we knew that when we were investigating this case and when we dealt with the media or whatever it was we were doing, we were playing before a party of one, because we knew the person responsible for these murders would be looking at us. So we were very careful how we handled the investigation. We maintained the integrity of the investigation. Most importantly of all, we maintained the secrecy of that investigation, and I think that's paid dividends as we've seen today. Now, I think that when we had the task force, the first thing we did, got together with Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, and we formed the task force. Our first meeting was February 1st of 2022. And what we did, what all of the agencies here, we made the commitment. We were going to take our most talented investigators. So in the district attorney's office, we took ADAs, myself included. We took analysts, we took detective investigators, and they worked on a daily basis with other talented investigators from all of the agencies here. We started that in February 1st in 2022. 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, the name Rex Heuermann was first mentioned as a suspect in the Gilgo case. A New York State investigator was able to identify him in a database, and from that point on, we used the power of the grand jury, over 300 subpoenas and search warrants, looking into this individual's background to bring us to this day. So I'm proud. I know that this case is over, but I'm proud of what we've accomplished up to this point. I know we have more to accomplish, but I'm also thankful for the partnership of the task force, because certainly without the participation of the task force, we wouldn't be standing here. Before I thank some folks and turn it over to our partners, I just want to talk a little bit about the evidence in the case. I know a lot of people know about the case. As I indicated, the victims went missing between July of 2010 and July of 2007 and September of 2010. And in December of 2010, their bodies were recovered. They were buried in a similar fashion, in a similar location, um, in a similar way. All the women were petite. Uh, they were they all did the same thing for a living. They all advertised the same way, and there were immediately there were similarities with regard to the crime scene. All the women were bound at the head, at the midsection, or at the chest, and later at the legs. The other thing I think that that's been talked about in the media was they were bound by um, burlap. That has taken a life of its own in the media, and the burlap has been described or thought to be the burlap that's used at a nursery. Or that's not the burlap that was used in this case. The burlap was camouflage burlap used for duck blinds of hunting. Um, Obviously, it was used to purposely hide the bodies. One thing that became immediately apparent was at the time of each of the murders, the murderer, the defendant Heuermann, he got a cell phone uh, and a burner phone, which is prepaid and anonymous. And for each of the murders, he got an individual burner phone, and he used that to communicate with the victims. Then, shortly after the death of the victims, he then would get rid of the burner phone. And right away in December of 2012, FBI cast analysts, special agents with the cast unit of the FBI, they immediately began looking at that cell site data. They compared the victims' phones with the burner phones, and they immediately honed in on some similarities, specifically in the Massapequa Park area. And they looked at an area of a confluence of 4 cell towers, and they realized that this had significance because the perpetrator of these crimes was probably located within this area at or around the times of the murder. And that was mapped out. That was called the box, and it was an area in Massapequa Park. The FBI also managed to do that for an area in Midtown Manhattan. And so that was an investigative lead. The other investigative lead at the time was, even though there was a significant amount of time that elapsed with regard to before the victims were recovered, there was some significant evidence recovered. Specifically, there was a hair recovered from Maureen Brainerd Barnes from a belt buckle that was around her legs. With regard to Megan Waterman, there were 3 hairs recovered from her. One from around her head area, one from around her leg area in the burlap, and then there was one caught in between the tape, and that was recovered. Amber Costello also had a significant hair that was recovered during the time time of the recovery. But again, the crime scene, because it was out there for so long, and because it was exposed to the elements, those hairs were degraded, so you couldn't use traditional DNA analysis on it. You would have to wait and use mitochondrial DNA. And back in 2010, the technology wasn't there for mitochondrial DNA. So the investigation proceeded, but also technology proceeded as well. And then in January and February of 2022, we formed the task force. We began working collectively. And then a mere 6 weeks later, on March 14th, 2022, Rex Heuermann was identified for the first time. And the manner in which that was done was the New York State investigator looked at a database. Amber Costello, the day before her disappearance on September 1st, 2010, she met with an individual for the purposes of having him pay her money for her services. But she involved herself in a ruse where once the individual uh, gave her money, and other individuals came into the house, pretended to be significant others, confronted the individual with the purpose of making that individual uncomfortable, having him leave without retrieving his money. And that's exactly what happened. So that individual was identified as a person who was between 6'4" and 6'6", a large man, thickly built, not necessarily overly muscular, but just a naturally big person with glasses, white, and dark hair. Also of significance was that the fact that he was driving a dark-colored black first first generation Chevrolet Avalanche with a very unique feature that was between it's a pickup truck, so it was between the cab and the bed, and that was identified. Again, that was back in 2010, but it wasn't until March of 2022 that database was searched by the task force, and this individual was identified. That individual was Rex Heuermann, the defendant. And right away, there were some commonalities that came right to the fore. Rex Heuermann, 6'4", largely a large person, not necessarily muscular, but a very physically large person. He has glasses. He has the dark hair, and also a particular note. He owned at the time that first generation Chevy Avalanche. There was more. He lived at 105 First Avenue, which was located within that box area that the FBI first discovered in 2012. But there was more. Also, he worked.
Like, I'm a little amazed at the amount of information he's giving out. I mean, I think it's good for the public, but not necessarily for the case.
No, I would tend to withhold 75% of what he has said. I don't know if it's such a great idea at this point.
No, he's like laying out the whole case. Let me get back to him.
Worked at the time at an architect and he owned his own architectural firm at an address at 19 West 36th Street in Midtown Manhattan, and that was also the area of interest that was identified by the FBI in 2012. Again, that was March 14th, 2022. And from that point on, our partners and my office, we used the grand jury to continue to investigate, and we executed over 300 subpoenas, search warrants pertaining to this individual to find out more information. One of the things that we did is we followed him because we wanted to get an abandonment sample of his DNA, which we were able to do. We also got DNA samples, abandonment samples from his family. And then we went back and we got mitochondrial DNA testing. And with regard to, there's an aspect of New York State law that doesn't allow me to talk about DNA testing, specifically at press conferences. So I can't do that. However, at the arraignment, and also when we filed our bail letter, we talked about the significance of that evidence. So if anyone needs to see that, but suffice to say, that evidence was significant, especially with regard to the other evidence that we had developed. But there was another interesting aspect. We looked at the Heuermann family travel records, and we learned that during the murders of the last three women, Bartholomew, Waterman, and Costello, that during the commission of those murders, the defendant's wife and children were out of New York State, and he was alone in the tri-state area. We also went back and looked at his cell site records, and we compared his personal cell site records with that of the four target phones, and we saw that there was areas of commonality. In other words, that whenever the target phones would bounce off a cell tower, if the Heuermann personal phone bounced off a tower, it was always.
Mike, couldn't this district attorney be making himself a witness?
He's really laying out way too much evidence, and this could hurt in a jury selection. Change of venue would be a motion I'd make immediately. He's kind of tainting the jury pool, and he's actually analyzing and discussing this kind of information. It could possibly, in a way, make him almost like a witness. Yeah, it's way too much. I mean, I know he's proud.
I think it's crazy, and I think this is also potentially could be a death penalty case.
Yeah, and you got to remember too. There's ethics. This is going, I think, way beyond what. And if I believe as an attorney, you should be able to keep secrets. And
Yes.
this is something that's
The
way
grand
beyond
jury presentation is secret. Why is he laying it all out? Let me get back to him, because I'm sure people want to hear what he has to say.
Consistent and in close proximity with the target phones. And at no time was there ever an instant where those target phones were, for instance, in New Jersey while the defendant was on Long Island. So that was completely consistent. The other thing that we looked at was we looked at his use of burner phones. And we followed, using the grand jury, using the great investigative help from our partners, we followed his use of burner phones. We were able to identify 7 separate burner phones that he used. We were able to use fictitious or fraudulent email addresses and get Google warrants. And from there, we got his searches. And we learned what the defendant was searching. In a 14-month period, he had over 200 searches pertaining to the Gilgo investigation. Not only was he looking at investigative insight, he was trying to figure out how is the task force using cell phones to try to figure out what's happening. What are the developments with regard to the task force? And this really supported our decision to keep our investigative focus secret, because we knew that this one person would be watching, and we didn't want to give him any insight into what we were doing. And we also didn't want him to know just how close we were getting. So we maintained the grand jury secrecy, and we maintained the integrity of our investigation. In addition to those Gilgo searches, he was compulsively searching pictures of the victims, but not only pictures of the victims, pictures of their relatives, their sisters, their children, and he was trying to locate those individuals. In addition to that, there was a lot of torture, porn, and what you would consider, depictions of women being abused, being raped, and being killed. In addition to all of that, we continued to look, and we were able to determine that Chevy Avalanche that was used during the commission of the Amber Costello crime, that Chevy Avalanche was in South Carolina. And again, with the help of our partners, we were able to seize that Chevy Avalanche pursuant to a search warrant, and we're certainly going to analyze that. In addition to that, pursuant to the arrest of the defendant last night by the Suffolk County Police Department, we obtained one of his burner phones, his last burner phones. As I said, this case is not over. It's only beginning. We're continuing to execute search warrants, and we anticipate getting more evidence. Before I turn it over to my partners, I want to thank a lot of people in the room. First and foremost, I want to thank the victims in this case. It's always inspiring as a prosecutor when you get to meet the victim.
Mike, this should be the thunder by the police. The police should be giving this press conference. This guy is like way out, in my opinion, way out of line. Dude, you just wrote a book at a press conference.
He's gone way beyond what you would expect from a district attorney. I would always err on the side of keeping very quiet, very not moving on and on, saying, look, ladies and gentlemen, we believe we got the right person. We've got DNA evidence. We've got scientific evidence. I just want to let you know, that sort of thing. We've had this is the result of a 1.5 year long effort by a wonderful, police commissioner, Harrison, and his task force, and leave it at that. This is way too much detail, and it can affect the jury pool, and he may be saying things that actually may not be considered relevant information and may not be admissible in court against Mr. Heuermann if it goes to a trial. It taints the jury pool. I'm not really happy with what he's doing at all.
All right, let's get back. He's thanking probably half the nation right now.
Victims, and while sometimes our defendants could embody the very worst of humanity, it seems that invariably our victims embody the very best of what it means to be human. And in this case, it was no different. I've gotten to know the families, and I'm inspired by them, and I'm impressed by their patience and by their dogged persistence in not only supporting their lost sisters or mother or daughter, but also really really standing for victims everywhere. So I want to thank them all so much. And I want to let them know that we're going to continue to work this case. The next thing I want to do, I want to thank our partners. I want to thank Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison. We said it was a change, and when we talked about not going before the media, if you see, Rodney did go before the media, but it was always in a very controlled manner, and it was always with a controlled purpose. Again, we did that because we knew we were playing before an audience of one person. And so I want to thank Rodney for his partnership. Most importantly, I want to thank Rodney for his integrity. I think in the past, the reason why these various investigations fell short was because there was a lot of outside influence, a lot of people who had nothing to do with the investigation, nothing to do with the investigation or any of the agencies that were actually handling the investigation. They still asserted pressure on those investigations. That did not happen with our task force. Our task force was run by our members, and we did what we thought was in the best investigative steps and what was in the best interest of the investigation. So I want to thank Rodney for that, and his whole team. I know that we have Suffolk County Homicide here, Kevin Byer. We've got Inspector Rowan, and I know that they've been around, and I know that they're here, and I know that they stand in the shoes of their past investigators, and I want to congratulate them, and I want to thank them for their partnership. I also want to thank Sheriff.
I think he should let them talk and stop. Give up the microphone.
I could say about Errol. Errol is
Definitely
an unbelievable partner. He was an unbelievable partner in this case during the pendency of this case. And one of the reasons why we had to take this case down was we learned that the defendant was using these alternate identities and these alternate instruments to continue to patronize sex workers, which of course made us very nervous. But with the help of the sheriff and his database and his analysts, we were able to continually stay one step ahead of the defendant. So thank you, Sheriff Toulon. I want to thank the FBI. I know Assistant Director in Charge Michael Brodak is here. I want to thank his entire team. When you have the FBI, not only do you have
he doesn't have to editorialize about everything he thinks. The guy's ridiculous.
sciences unit, whether
Give it
it's
up.
CAST, whether it's CART, which is their computer unit, but you also have the ability to seize a car in South Carolina. I can't seize a car in South Carolina without the FBI. So thank you for that, and thank you for your partnership, and thank you for your willingness to work with us. I want to thank the New York State troopers. I know Major Udis is here and his team. This case is emblematic of great cooperation, but we always get that same level of cooperation from the state police, no matter what case we're working. So I want to thank them. Their investigators did great work on this job and in this case, and we couldn't have done it without them. Lastly, I want to thank Nassau County Police Commissioner Pat Ryder. I don't know if he's here. Did he make it? This case, as I said, spans 13 years, and during that time, Pat Ryder has been our neighbor to the west. When it started, I think he was a sergeant, detective sergeant, maybe uniform sergeant, but whatever. Whenever we needed something to be done, or whenever the task force needed something to be done, Pat Ryder would do it, and he would do it quietly, without much fanfare, and we know he would keep the confidentiality of our grand jury and our investigation. So I want to thank him for that. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Rodney Harrison.
Thank the Lord.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Today is a good day. And before I acknowledge the individuals that had a role in getting to this place, I would first and foremost like to offer my deepest condolences to the family members. To the family members of Amber Costello, Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman. I can only imagine what you had to endure over the last decade regarding knowing that your killer was still loose. God bless you. So I've had the privilege of being the police commissioner. It's nearly about 2 years now, and I have had that investigative experience in the NYPD as a detective, as the chief of detectives. And when I was going through the process of being the police commissioner, my engagement with the county executive was I was very familiar with this unfortunate homicides. And I wanted to let it be known that this was going to be our #1 priority. But I also want to make this very clear, that this arrest was made by the investigators assigned to the task force. I announced during a press conference 18 months ago about a new team effort that was going to investigate the homicide, and that was going to consist of people from Ray Tierney's office, from Mike Broddock, FBI. Mike, thank you so much. State Police, Steve, appreciate your support. Dr. Earl Talon, Jr., thank you, sir. As well as the investigators from the homicide detectives in Suffolk County. Gentlemen, thank you for all you've done, working together with us, making sure we are here today. I also want to thank my partner, Pat Ryder. Pat, good seeing you, man. And former NYPD Police Commissioner, Keyshawn Sewell, for providing resources to assist in the investigation that brought us here today. So, one of my first acts was to survey the scene. When I first got assigned as a police commissioner, me and Kevin Breyer went over to Gilgo Beach. I want to thank Kevin. You know, when I first met Kevin, he broke the whole case down and where we stood. He knew the case like the back of his hand. He worked tirelessly in this case. Kev was in charge of overseeing the task force since its creation, and you did a phenomenal job, Kev. Thank you. So there's something that I learned from a former NYPD police commissioner, James O'Neill, which is in order to fight crime or to solve investigations, you have to make sure you're working with your law enforcement partners. The blueprint in making this arrest was a whole team effort. Everybody left their egos at the door and made sure that they brought the knowledge and the resources to this investigation. Fresh eyes on this case and the resiliency of our investigators allowed us to identify Rex Heuermann. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families. If not for the members of this task force, he would still be out in the streets today. However, even with this arrest, we're not done. There's more work to do in this investigation regarding the other victims of the Gilgo Beach bodies that were discovered. I'm going to encourage anybody that still has information, call our Crime Stoppers hotline, 1-800-220-TIPS. I want to recognize and thank my Chief of Detectives, John. Thank you for your great work. Deputy Police Commissioner Anthony Carter, both of you who provided update information regarding the case and let it be known if there was any resources that they needed that you brought it to my attention. Since the discovery of the first victim, there's been a lot of scrutiny and criticism regarding how this investigation was handled. I will tell you this, the investigators were never discouraged. They continued and uncovered evidence and followed leads. They never stopped working and will continue to work tirelessly until we bring justice to all the families involved. Last but not least, I want to thank my predecessors that came before me, the work that they did. I want to thank them for really laying the foundation that helped us get to here today. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Brodak. I'm the FBI Special Agent in charge of the New York office's Criminal Division. The FBI expended its full set of resources in support of our local and state partners to advance this investigation. The charges show that we can overcome the most difficult challenges when federal, state, and local law enforcement work together under one task force. While nothing can fill the void caused by the loss of a loved one, through today's announcement, we are hopeful that the families of the victims begin to experience a sense of peace, closure, and justice, and that the general public feels safer knowing that an alleged killer is no longer roaming free. The actions taken today should serve as a reminder that the FBI, along with our law enforcement partners, will continue to be resolute in our determination to bring all offenders to justice, no matter how many years has passed. I would like to thank Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney and his prosecution team, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison and the Suffolk County Police Department, the New York State Police, and the investigators and staff of the FBI New York Field Office, including the Long Island Violent Crime Task Force. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Errol D. Toulon Jr., and I'm the Sheriff of Suffolk County. I would profoundly like to thank the District Attorney and the police commissioner for including me not only here today, but for including the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office and recognizing the importance of jail intelligence. It is extremely important when you realize that we created our human trafficking unit in 2018, that there are victims in our community, and that intelligence is being shared by many of the men and women who are incarcerated today. And we have seen many disjointed investigations occur, and leading up to the leadership of these two men have really brought everything together. I am proud that today we stand here a little bit closer to bringing closure to the families and extend my deepest condolences to all of you. Because of the nature of this case and recognizing that human trafficking and corrections intelligence is so important, we realize that there are many other cases that are going on that we will help to solve going forward. So I thank my intelligence staff and team that are here today for their diligence and their work. While we did our part in this investigation, we continue because we have to house this individual. We have already designated or talked about certain locations where we will house him. And in addition, the security measures we will implement in our facility to make sure that this individual is brought to justice the way he should be. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Richard Allen, the field commander with the state police. And I want to start by expressing my sincere condolences to the family members that are here today. Although losing a loved one, you can never completely get rid of that pain, but hopefully these steps that are taken here today are a step in the right direction for you to start in the healing process or work through the healing process. I want to thank the members of the task force, all the agencies you see behind me. When we were approached in 2022 to be part of this task force, we were fully engaged. Glad to be part of this. We assigned investigators on a full-time basis. You know, what you see being done here today is the end game of agencies working together, as was said before, with no egos, all egos put aside, with the sole mission to find justice for these victims. You know, here in Troop L, Major Stephen Udis oversees the operations down here. He has been intricately involved in this task force since we became partners with it. And I'm going to ask him to come up and say a few words or expand upon this a little bit of our role in the task force.
Thank you, Colonel. Good afternoon. I'm Major Steve Udis, New York State Police, Troop L, Long Island Troop Commander. I'd like to take this opportunity to start off by acknowledging the DA, Ray Tierney, and Commissioner Rodney Harrison for having the vision to see that forming a task force might breathe new light into this investigation. The state police were asked in early 2022 to join this task force, and once requested, we were more than willing to do so. We were also very pleased that we were able to make some very meaningful contributions in this case to help propel it forward. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the task force members from the different agencies and congratulate them on a job well done. I think this case represents an example of what we as law enforcement can do when we pool our resources together and we work together. I would also like to mention the state police member assigned to this task force. You were provided with a mission, and that mission was to participate in this task force, put everything else that you were doing aside, place 100% of your attention on this case, and help push this case forward. You more than accomplished that mission. I congratulate you on a job well done, and I commend you for your outstanding work. To the families, I'd like to say that on behalf of myself and the New York State Police, we offer you our deepest condolences. We recognize that these crimes may have happened years ago, but that pain continues. Our hope is that this development today provides you with some relief and some comfort, knowing that the person responsible for your loved one's death is now being held accountable, and he's no longer a threat to anyone else in society. I want you to know, additionally, that the state police is not done here. we are remaining committed and will continue to support the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, the Suffolk County Police Department, and this task force as we move into the next phase of this process. That's the prosecution. I would also like to say something to everyone watching this with us today. There's been a lot of discussion here today about charges, about the suspect, about what happened, but I would also like everybody to take the time to join with me and keep the families of the victims and the victims themselves in your thoughts and in your prayers. Each one of these victims was a family member and a loved one, and their void and their loss caused great pain, and they did not deserve this. Nobody is deserving of this. We hope this development today will bring some comfort to them as they move forward. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
The safety of people in the community. Can you just explain that more here?
You know, sure. Before I do that, just, I'm standing back there. I realized I didn't thank my own team. So I want to thank my chief investigator, Rick Zacharis, who is without. I'm so lucky to have. I want to thank Nick Santamartino, ADA Nick Santamartino, ADA Michelle Haddad, ADA Andrew Lee. I also want to thank my chief assistant, Alan Bodie, and I want to thank all of the incredible analysts that we have working for us at the Suffolk County DA's office. So, having said that, I'll now answer your question. I think that there was a tension in the task force, and it was a good tension because there's a tension between getting the evidence necessary to charge somebody, but also keeping the public safe. And that's the tension that we always deal with. So as we were working forward, we had Suffolk County PD, we had the FBI surveilling the defendant. Obviously, that can't be all the time, but we were reasonably assured with that. But this individual was a person that continued to patronize sex workers at all hours of the night. He continued to use fictitious email addresses.
Mike, I think I'm going to pull away from this. I'm going to remove it from the screen. I think he outlined the entire case. I don't need to listen to 2 hours of questions now. Look, he gave a lot of information. I wish the police, Rodney Harrison, and maybe some of the investigators, even the chief of detectives from Suffolk County, got to speak a little bit. He went on too long, this district attorney. And the fact that he's taking questions now, dude, I could see our audience is fleeing because the attention span doesn't last that long. A press conference shouldn't last this long. Look, I have a lot of things I would love to know about this Rex Heuermann. He seems like a real animal, a real savage, and just his premeditation and his planning. He's a real serial killer. I would like to hear more about that angle of this case, and we're going to surely report on this more, Mike. In fact, tonight at 9:30, I don't know if you can join me. I'm going to do session 3 of today. I'm going to go on again tonight. Duty Ron, my buddy, Crime Time with Duty Ron, is going to go on at 8 o'clock with Ed Wallace. And there's surely more information that we're going to find out from other sources. And I'm going to go on again tonight at 9:30. And as I said, Mike, if you're available, you're invited to come. Potentially, Phil Grimaldi will join me. Folks, I just want to, for those that have never seen Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to help us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership. And you see all the folks in the green font. They're part of our channel members. And we have 5 different levels. I'm a little bit sorry that it went over this long. I didn't expect the press conference to last that long. In fact, it's still going on. So we pulled away from it because I could sense that audience, if they want to watch it, they can watch it on their own TV. But as I said, we'll be back again tonight at 9:30. Mike, I'm going to go to you with your final words.
Final words, I think it's great for people to realize that the use of technology like DNA technology, cell phone technology, cutting edge technology, the use of it to narrow down a field of suspects, and then comes the hard work with the regular with things that people see on TV. All the cops going out there, detectives knocking on doors, getting warrants, and doing all that other stuff. It's old-fashioned, hard, lengthy, lot of hours police work with all that other scientific evidence coming in on top and supporting each other. It was a fabulous job. And, as anybody knows, as you know, especially, you have these investigations, they go on sometimes for a long time. And the fact that this committee, investigative committee was formed 18 months ago and is now done, that's fabulous. And that's very quick. That's great. They seem to have dotted every I, crossed every T. And they've had a lot of effort from a whole number of different police departments. That's fantastic. And that's policing at its finest. And you get great results that way. So I think everybody should, especially in the New York City metropolitan area, should breathe a sigh of relief.
Absolutely. I want to just also sort of go into where the all of the speakers first led off with, and is to talk about the families that lost loved ones and, of course, the victims. That's who the police ultimately work for. And the great work that the police did in this case so that there are no more victims, because surely there would have been more victims had this Rex Heuermann not been caught. He was not finished with his serial killer career. And thank God we have great investigators. We have the sciences, and we have this cooperation with law enforcement coming together. They're a powerful force that no criminal can defeat. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. As I said, I'll be on tonight at 9:30. If you want to join me again, I'll be more than happy to have you come by tonight. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
Take care.
One episode just ain't enough.